There is a quiet frustration many people carry, even if they never put it into words. You walk into conversations knowing what you want to say. You have thoughts, ideas, boundaries. Yet somehow, when the moment passes, you feel unseen, unheard, slightly dismissed. I know that feeling well. For a long time, I thought the solution was to speak up more, to explain myself better, to react faster, defend harder, prove that I deserved to be taken seriously. I believed respect came from effort, from showing people my value again and again. But every time I did that, something slipped away. The more I reacted, the less steady I felt. The more I explained, the less convincing I sounded. The more emotional I became, the less influence I had. What hurt most wasn't being disagreed with. It was realizing that I was giving my power away in moments when I thought I was protecting it. That's when I started paying attention to a different kind of person. The ones who were respected without trying, the ones who didn't rush to respond, the ones who stayed calm while others grew tense. They weren't cold, they weren't arrogant, they weren't trying to dominate anyone. They were simply grounded, and that grounding changed everything. I began to understand that respect doesn't come from volume, it doesn't come from speed, and it definitely doesn't come from emotional reactions. Respect comes from presence, from control, from the ability to stay centered when things get uncomfortable. This audiobook is about that realization. It's not about being silent all the time. It's not about suppressing how you feel. And it's not about playing psychological games with people. It's about learning how to hold yourself steady when life tests you. Because life will test you. Someone will misunderstand you. Someone will challenge you. Someone will push your buttons when you least expect it. And in those moments, the instinct to react is strong. It feels natural. It feels justified. But reacting rarely leads to respect. Most of the time, it leads to regret. Calm control is different. Calm control is choosing not to let your emotions speak for you. It's knowing that you don't have to respond to everything immediately. It's understanding that silence, when intentional, can say more than words ever could. When you develop this kind of control, people feel it. They may not be able to explain it, but they sense your stability. Your confidence stops depending on their reactions, and slowly, the way they treat you begins to change. Not because you demanded respect, but because you no longer gave your power away. If you've ever walked away from a situation wishing you had stayed calmer. If you've ever replayed a conversation in your head thinking, I should have handled that differently. If you've ever felt that your emotions were leading you instead of the other way around, you're not broken, you're human. And what you're about to hear is not a shortcut, it's a path. A way of moving through the world with more clarity, more dignity, and more inner strength. As you listen, take your time. Let the ideas settle. Notice where they connect with your own experiences. This is not about changing who you are. It's about returning to who you are when you're calm, not grounded, and fully in control. And if this message resonates with you, don't keep it to yourself. Share this video with someone you care about. A friend who's struggling, someone who feels overwhelmed, someone who could benefit from learning how to regain control and improve their life. Sometimes, the right message at the right moment can make more difference than we realize. Chapter 1. Why trying to be respected makes you weaker. Most people never notice the moment they start losing respect. It doesn't happen loudly. It doesn't come with a clear signal. It happens quietly, through small habits that feel harmless at first. You explain yourself a little more than necessary. You react a little faster than you should. You speak, not because you've thought things through, but because silence feels uncomfortable. And slowly, without realizing it, your presence loses weight. I learned this the hard way. There was a time when I believed respect was something you had to chase. If someone questioned me, I clarified. If someone misunderstood me, I corrected them. If someone challenged me, I responded immediately. In my mind, staying silent felt like losing. Letting things pass felt weak. Pausing felt like surrender. But the more I tried to secure respect, the less I seemed to have. People interrupted me more. They challenged my decisions more openly. They treated my words as optional, negotiable, disposable. What confused me most was that my intentions were good. I wasn't trying to dominate anyone. I wasn't trying to appear superior. I just wanted to be understood, to be seen as competent, to be taken seriously. Yet every attempt to prove myself did the opposite. That's when an uncomfortable truth began to surface. The need to be respected is often what destroys respect. When you try to earn respect through effort, explanation, or emotional reaction, you signal something without meaning to. You signal uncertainty. You signal dependence. You signal that your sense of worth is tied to how others respond to you, and people feel that immediately. Respect doesn't come from convincing someone of your value. It comes from behaving as if your value is already settled. The moment you feel the urge to prove yourself, you've already stepped out of that position. Think about it. The people you naturally respect rarely explain themselves too much. They don't rush to defend every decision. They don't react emotionally to every disagreement, not because they are detached, but because they are grounded. They trust their own judgment enough to let silence do part of the work. Trying to be respected often looks like strength on the surface, but underneath, it's driven by fear. Fear of being misunderstood, fear of being ignored, fear of not being enough. And fear-based behavior never carries authority, no matter how polished it sounds. One of the most subtle ways people lose respect is through over-explaining. You say something simple, then add another sentence to make sure it lands. Then another, just in case. Then one more, because silence feels awkward. What you don't realize is that each extra sentence weakens the original message. It turns a clear statement into a negotiation. Over-explaining tells people you're not fully confident in what you said. It invites doubt. It opens the door for others to question, reinterpret, or dismiss your point. Silence would have done more. Another common habit is reacting too quickly. Someone challenges you, and you respond immediately, driven by emotion rather than clarity. In that moment, it feels powerful to speak. It feels like standing up for yourself. But what often comes out is tension, defensiveness, or unnecessary intensity. People don't respect emotional reactions. They respect emotional control. The person who pauses before responding sends a clear message. I'm not controlled by this moment. That message alone changes the entire dynamic. I remember the first time I consciously chose not to react. The situation was uncomfortable. A comment was made that felt dismissive. Every part of me wanted to respond instantly, to correct it, to push back. But instead, I stayed quiet. I took a breath. I let the moment pass. It felt wrong, almost irresponsible. But something interesting happened. The other person became uneasy. They adjusted their tone. They clarified themselves without being asked. The power shifted, not because I spoke louder, but because I didn't. That was the moment I understood something critical. Respect grows in the space you don't rush to fill. Trying to be respected keeps you busy. Calm control keeps you powerful. When you stop chasing validation, you stop leaking energy. You stop performing. You stop shaping yourself around other people's reactions. And in that stillness, your presence becomes heavier. This doesn't mean becoming cold or distant. It doesn't mean ignoring people or withholding communication. It means choosing your moments with intention, speaking when your words add value, not when your emotions demand release. The strongest shift happens internally. When you no longer need immediate approval, you stop fearing disapproval. When you stop fearing disapproval, you stop reacting to it. And when you stop reacting, people begin to treat you differently. They listen more carefully. They interrupt less. They test you less, not because you demanded respect, but because you demonstrated self-command. The irony is that respect arrives when you're no longer chasing it. This chapter is not asking you to withdraw from the world. It's asking you to stop negotiating your worth in every interaction, to stop explaining your boundaries, to stop reacting as if every moment requires a defense. You don't need to announce your strength. You don't need to justify your calm. You don't need to prove anything. The moment you internalize that, your behavior changes naturally. Your voice steadies. Your responses slow down. Your silence becomes intentional instead of awkward. And people feel it. They may not be able to describe what's different about you, but they will sense it. A quiet confidence, a grounded presence, a subtle authority that doesn't need to assert itself. Trying to be respected keeps you trapped in reaction. Letting go of that need frees you to lead the moment instead. In the next chapter, we'll go deeper into why calm is so often misunderstood as weakness, and why, in reality, it is one of the most powerful forms of control you can develop. Chapter 2. Calm is not weakness, it's control. Calm is one of the most misunderstood traits in modern life. From a young age, many of us are conditioned to believe that strength looks loud, that confidence looks assertive, that power shows itself through fast reactions, strong opinions, and visible emotion. When someone raises their voice, pushes back immediately, or dominates a conversation, it's easy to mistake that intensity for authority. But intensity is not controlled, and control is where real power lives. I used to associate calmness with passivity. When someone stayed quiet during tension, I assumed they were avoiding conflict. When they didn't react, I thought they lacked conviction. And when they didn't defend themselves right away, I believed they were being walked over. What I didn't understand at the time was that calmness, when intentional, is not an absence of strength. It is strength restrained. There is a critical difference between being calm because you are afraid and being calm because you are in control. Most people never learn to tell the difference, and as a result, they spend their lives overreacting just to avoid looking weak. The truth is this: people who lack control must express everything. People with control choose what to express. Calm is the ability to feel emotion without being ruled by it. It is the space between what happens and how you respond, and that space is where authority is formed. Think about moments of pressure, an argument, a confrontation, a stressful decision. In those moments, your nervous system is activated. Your body wants to act, to speak, to release tension. That urge feels urgent, almost necessary. But urgency is not wisdom. When you give in to that urge immediately, you hand control to the situation. You let external pressure dictate your internal state. Your response becomes predictable, reactive, and easy to influence. Calm interrupts that pattern. Calm says, "I see what's happening and I'm not rushing." Calm says, "I'm choosing my response, not spilling it." Calm says, "This moment does not own me." That message is felt instantly by others. People may not consciously register it, but they sense when someone is unshaken. They notice when a person doesn't scramble to explain, when they don't rush to fill the silence, when they don't let tension hijack their behavior. Calm creates psychological gravity. It pulls attention instead of chasing it. It slows the pace of the interaction. It forces others to adjust. This is why calm people often seem more powerful without trying to be. They are not fighting the moment. They are standing above it. One of the biggest lies we internalize is that if we don't react, we lose. That silence equals agreement. That calm equals submission. But in reality, an uncontrolled reaction is what puts you at a disadvantage. When you react emotionally, you reveal too much. Your triggers become visible. Your boundaries become negotiable. Your position weakens because it's driven by feeling rather than clarity. Calm keeps your position intact. I remember a situation where I was criticized publicly in a way that felt unfair. The instinct to defend myself was immediate. My thoughts raced, my chest tightened. I could feel the words lining up, ready to fire back. Instead, I paused, not because I had nothing to say, but because I refused to let emotion speak for me. That pause changed the entire interaction. The other person filled the silence. Their tone softened. They clarified their intent. What could have escalated into conflict dissolved on its own. That wasn't a weakness. That was control. Calm does not mean you never respond. It means you respond when you're ready, not when you're provoked. It means you choose timing, tone, and content deliberately. This kind of control takes practice, because everything in modern life pushes you in the opposite direction. Notifications demand instant replies. Social pressure rewards quick reactions. Emotional expression is often mistaken for authenticity, but authenticity without discipline is chaos. Calm discipline allows you to stay true to yourself without losing composure. It allows you to feel deeply without acting impulsively. And that balance is rare. When you develop calm control, something subtle happens inside you. You stop feeling rushed by other people's expectations. You stop fearing awkward silence. You stop equating speed with strength. You realize that you don't have to prove you're calm. You simply are. And when you are calm, your words carry more weight. Your decisions feel more solid. Your presence becomes stabilizing rather than reactive. People trust calm people, not because they are perfect, but because they are predictable in the best way. They don't explode, they don't spiral, they don't make emotional decisions under pressure. That reliability creates respect. Calm is also a form of self-respect. When you choose not to react immediately, you're telling yourself that your inner state matters, that you don't need to sacrifice your peace to win a moment, that you value long-term authority over short-term relief. This shift is not dramatic. It doesn't announce itself, but it compounds. Each time you stay calm under pressure, you reinforce a new identity. Someone who leads themselves. Someone who doesn't panic. Someone who doesn't get pulled into unnecessary battles. And slowly, the world responds differently. Conversations slow down around you. People choose their words more carefully. Conflicts lose their edge. Not because you demanded control, but because you embodied it. Calm is not a weakness. Calm is strength that has learned to wait. In the next chapter, we'll explore what happens in the exact moment you choose not to react, and why that single decision can quietly return power back to you. Chapter 3. The moment you don't react, you take power back. There is a precise moment when power shifts. It doesn't happen after you speak. It doesn't happen when you win an argument. It happens earlier than that. It happens in the instant you feel the urge to react and choose not to. Most people believe power is something you gain by doing more, saying more, responding faster, defending harder. But the real shift happens when you interrupt that instinct, when you stop yourself right before the reaction escapes. That pause is invisible to others, but it changes everything. I used to think reacting quickly showed confidence. That hesitation meant uncertainty. If someone challenged me and I responded immediately, I felt sharp, present, engaged. But over time, I noticed a pattern. The faster I reacted, the less control I had over the outcome. My words became shaped by emotion instead of intention. My tone betrayed tension I didn't want to reveal. My message became secondary to my mood. The moment I didn't react was the moment I began to see clearly. At first, it felt uncomfortable, almost unnatural. When something triggered me, my body still wanted to respond. My heart rate would rise. My thoughts would race. Silence felt like holding my breath underwater. But within that discomfort was something new: awareness. When you don't react immediately, you create space. Space between the stimulus and your response. And in that space, You regain ownership of yourself. Most people live without that space. They are pulled from one emotional reaction to the next, convinced they are choosing freely, when in reality they are being steered by impulses they never question. Team power begins the moment you interrupt that loop. Think about how easy it is to provoke someone who reacts quickly. A single comment can derail their mood. A small criticism can trigger defensiveness. Once you see someone's reactions, you know how to influence them. When you don't react, that leverage disappears. The other person no longer knows where you stand emotionally. They can't predict your next move. The dynamic shifts from reaction to observation, from emotion to presence. And people feel that shift immediately. I remember a moment when someone tried to provoke a response from me deliberately. The comment was sharp, personal, designed to get a rise. In the past, I would have responded instantly, fueled by irritation and a need to assert myself. This time I didn't. I stayed quiet. I maintained eye contact. And I didn't rush to fill the silence. What followed was telling. The tension didn't grow. It moved. The other person became restless. They explained themselves. They softened their words. The energy they had projected outward returned to them. By not reacting, I had taken power back without saying a word. This is the part most people misunderstand. Not reacting does not mean doing nothing. It means choosing not to act on impulse. It means refusing to let someone else decide your emotional state for you. When you react instantly, you give the moment authority over you. You surrender your internal leadership. When you pause, you reclaim it. That pause can be short, a few seconds, a breath, a silent count. But its impact is disproportionate. In that moment, you assess instead of explode. You observe instead of defend. You choose instead to discharge emotion. The body will resist this at first. Emotional habits are deeply ingrained. Your nervous system has learned that reaction equals safety. Speaking equals control. Silence equals danger. But those signals are outdated. You are not losing control when you don't react. You are practicing it. The strongest individuals are not those who feel nothing. They are the ones who feel everything and still decide carefully. When you don't react, you also gain information. You see how others behave when they're not being challenged immediately. You notice their insecurity, their assumptions, their need for validation. Silence invites revelation. Reaction shuts it down. This is why restraint has always been associated with leadership. Leaders don't respond to every provocation, and they don't let every comment dictate their behavior. They understand that timing is as important as content. A delayed response, delivered calmly, carries far more weight than an immediate emotional one. There is also a deeper internal shift that happens. Each time you don't react, you reinforce a new identity. Someone who is not easily shaken, someone who doesn't need to prove anything in the heat of the moment, someone who trusts themselves enough to wait. That trust compounds. You begin to feel less rushed in conversations, less anxious about being misunderstood, less dependent on winning every exchange. And with that comes a sense of quiet authority. People may not know why they adjust around you, but they do. They choose their words more carefully. They hesitate before provoking. They sense that you are not easily moved. Not reacting is not passive. It is a form of discipline. It requires strength to sit with discomfort, to allow tension without releasing it through words, to remain steady while others are emotionally active. But that strength is visible. Over time, you stop feeling the need to react at all. Not because you are numb, but because you are centered. You recognize that most situations don't require immediate response. They require clarity. And clarity arrives when emotion settles. The moment you don't react, you step out of the emotional current and onto solid ground. You see the situation for what it is, not what it feels like. From that position, any response you choose is deliberate. That is where power lives. In the next chapter, we'll explore how silence, used intentionally, can make people listen more closely than words ever could. Chapter 4. Silence that makes people listen. Most people are uncomfortable with silence, not the peaceful kind, but the kind that appears in conversation, the pause after a statement, the space after a question, the moment when nothing is said and something is expected. So they rush to fill it. They add another sentence. They explain further. They talk just to avoid the tension of being quiet, and without realizing it, they give their power away. Silence, when used unintentionally, feels awkward, but silence, when chosen deliberately, carries weight. It slows the moment down, it forces attention, and it subtly shifts control. I used to believe that speaking more meant communicating better. That clarity came from detail, that if someone didn't immediately understand me, the solution was to say more. But over time, and I noticed something strange. The more I spoke, the less people listened. My words blended together. Important points lost their impact. Conversations felt rushed, noisy, forgettable. And when I finally stopped talking, nothing landed. It wasn't until I started saying less that things changed. Silence creates contrast. When everything is filled with sound, nothing stands out. But when there is space, what remains becomes sharper. A single sentence, followed by silence, is far more memorable than a long explanation delivered without pause. People lean in when there is silence, not physically, but mentally. Their attention sharpens, their minds fill the gap, and in doing so, they engage more deeply than if you had continued talking. This is why experienced speakers pause intentionally, not because they have nothing to say, but because they understand timing. They know that silence gives their words room to settle. In everyday life, the same principle applies. When you state something calmly and then stop, you signal confidence. You show that you trust your words enough not to defend them immediately. You show that you're not anxious about how they will be received. That trust is felt. Silence also reveals more than speech ever could. When you stop filling the space, others feel compelled to fill it for you. They explain themselves, they clarify, they expose their assumptions. What would have stayed hidden behind noise surfaces naturally? I've seen conversations change direction simply because I stayed quiet. Someone makes a statement, expecting a reaction. Instead, they're met with silence. They adjust, they add context. They soften their tone. The silence invites reflection, and reflection alters behavior. This is not manipulation, it's awareness. Most people speak to release tension, not to communicate. Silence forces them to sit with that tension, and when they do, their true intentions often emerge. There is also a deep internal discipline involved in silence. It takes restraint to stop yourself from responding immediately, to resist the urge to clarify, to allow misunderstanding to exist for a moment without rushing to correct it. That restraint is a form of strength most people never develop. Silence is uncomfortable because it removes distraction. It exposes emotion. It demands presence. But that is exactly why it works. When you are comfortable with silence, you are comfortable with yourself. You don't need constant affirmation. You don't need immediate agreement. You don't need to control every perception in real time. That self-assurance changes how people relate to you. They begin to speak more carefully. They become more aware of their own words. They sense that your reactions are not automatic, and that makes them listen. One of the most powerful uses of silence is after you say something important. Instead of continuing, you stop. You let the weight of the statement exist without padding it. You don't rescue it. You don't soften it. You allow it to stand on its own. That pause tells people that what you said matters. Another powerful moment for silence is when you are challenged. Instead of reacting immediately, you pause. You consider. You don't rush to defend. That pause signals composure. It shows that you are not threatened by disagreement. Often, the challenge dissolves on its own. A silence also protects you from saying things you don't mean. Many regrets are born from moments when words outran clarity, when emotion led speech, when silence would have prevented damage. Choosing not to speak gives clarity time to arrive, and clarity always improves communication. This doesn't mean withdrawing from conversation or becoming distant. Silence is not avoidance, it is an intentional presence. It is being fully engaged without being compulsively expressive. You're still listening, you're still aware, you are simply not filling space unnecessarily. As you practice this, you'll notice a shift inside yourself. You'll feel less pressure to perform, less urgency to respond, less anxiety about how you're perceived, and with that calm, your words become fewer, but stronger. People remember them, people repeat them, people respond to them. Silence sharpens authority because it shows that you are not dependent on constant expression. You're not trying to dominate the conversation. You are guiding it through presence rather than volume. Over time, silence becomes a signal. It signals confidence without arrogance. It signals control without force. It signals depth without display. Those signals are rare, and rarity creates respect. Most people are talking, very few are grounded. When you learn to be comfortable in silence, you separate yourself without trying to stand out. You don't compete for attention, you attract it. In the next chapter, we'll explore how over-explaining quietly erodes authority, and how learning when to stop talking can dramatically change how others perceive you. Chapter 5. Stop explaining yourself to earn respect. There is a habit that quietly drains authority more than almost anything else. It doesn't look harmful. It often feels polite. Sometimes it even feels responsible. That habit is over-explaining. Most people explain themselves not because they have to, but because they feel an internal pressure to be understood, approved of, or accepted. They sense doubt in the room, real or imagined, and rush to erase it with words. I did this for years without noticing. I would make a point, then immediately soften it. I would set a boundary, then justify it. I would give a decision, then explain how difficult it was to make. What I thought was clarity was actually insecurity wearing a reasonable mask. The truth is uncomfortable, but simple. When you explain too much, you signal that your words are negotiable. Over-explaining sends a message before anyone consciously hears it. It tells people you're unsure, that you're open to being convinced otherwise, that your position needs reinforcement because it can't stand on its own. And people respond accordingly. They question you more, they push back more, they feel entitled to your reasoning. Not because they're disrespectful, but because the structure you've created invites it. There is a difference between clarity and justification. Clarity is when you communicate what matters, concisely and calmly. Justification is when you speak to relieve discomfort, yours or theirs. Most over-explaining is emotional, not logical. It comes from the fear of being misunderstood, the fear of disappointing someone, the fear of appearing harsh, cold, or unreasonable. So you add context, then more context, then disclaimers. You dilute your message until it feels safe enough to release. But safety comes at a cost. When your words are padded with excuses and explanations, their impact weakens. The listener stops focusing on what you decided and starts evaluating why. Your authority shifts from being a position to being a debate. Strong presence does not require defense. Think about the people you respect most. They don't explain every choice. They don't narrate their internal process. They state what is, and they let it be. This doesn't make them arrogant. It makes them grounded. I remember the first time I consciously stopped explaining myself. I said no to a request. A simple no. Nothing dramatic. No anger. No apology. Just a calm refusal. The silence afterward was uncomfortable. My instincts screamed to add something, a reason, an excuse, a reassurance, but I didn't. And what surprised me was not how the other person reacted, but how I felt. I felt exposed, but also steady, vulnerable, but intact. The conversation moved on. No argument, no resentment, no loss of respect. That moment taught me something essential. Most explanations are not required. They volunteered out of habit. Over-explaining also creates imbalance. When you give long explanations, you position the other person as a judge, someone who gets to decide whether your reasons are valid enough. You place yourself on trial without being asked. That dynamic quietly erodes self-respect. Boundaries don't need defending. Decisions don't need narrating. Preferences don't need permission. The more comfortable you become with letting your words stand alone, is the stronger your presence becomes. This doesn't mean becoming cold or uncommunicative. It means learning when explanation adds value and when it only adds noise. There are moments when clarity is necessary, when someone genuinely needs information, when context improves understanding, when explanation builds trust. But those moments are intentional. Over-explaining, on the other hand, is automatic. It happens before anyone asks. It fills silence out of anxiety. It tries to control perception instead of trusting reality. One of the most powerful shifts you can make is to answer questions directly and stop there. Not abruptly, not defensively, just completely. Say what you mean. Pause. Let the other person respond. If they ask for more, then you decide whether to give it. This practice does something subtle but profound to your nervous system. It teaches you that silence is survivable, that misunderstanding doesn't equal danger, that you don't need to manage every emotional ripple around you. With time, the urge to explain weakens. You stop feeling responsible for how others interpret you. You stop chasing agreement. You stop shaping yourself to avoid discomfort. And as that urge fades, your communication becomes cleaner. Fewer words, stronger tone, clearer boundaries. People may not consciously notice the change, but they will feel it. They will sense that you are not asking for approval, that you trust your own judgment, that you don't need to convince, that trust is magnetic. The paradox is this: the less you try to be understood, the more seriously you're taken. Because respect is not built through explanation, it's built through consistency, through calm delivery, through the quiet confidence of someone who doesn't need to justify their existence in every sentence. When you stop explaining yourself, you reclaim time, energy, and dignity. You let your actions speak. You allow your words to carry weight without support, and slowly, the world adjusts. People listen more carefully. They interrupt less. They accept your decisions with fewer objections. Not because you demanded anything, but because you stopped negotiating what didn't need to be negotiated. In the next chapter, we'll explore what happens when pressure rises and how staying calm under stress changes not only how you feel, but how others treat you. Chapter 6. Calm under pressure. Changes how people treat you. Pressure reveals more than personality. It reveals preparation. Anyone can appear composed when things are easy, when conversations are polite, when expectations are low. But the moments that shape how people truly see you are the moments when pressure enters the room. A disagreement, a deadline, a confrontation, a sudden problem that demands a response. Under pressure, most people change. Their voice tightens. Their words speed up. Their emotions begin to leak into every sentence. Even when they are technically right, they lose credibility the moment tension takes control. I used to think pressure exposed weakness. I later realized it exposes habits. When pressure hits, you don't rise to the level of your intentions. You fall to the level of your training. And if your training is an emotional reaction, that's exactly what will come out. Calm under pressure is not natural. It is built, and because it is rare, it stands out immediately. Think about how differently people treat someone who remains steady during stress. They listen more closely. They interrupt less. They become more careful with their words. Not because they're afraid, but because they sense stability. Calm has a grounding effect. It slows the emotional pace of the room. It reduces chaos. It creates a center others subconsciously orient around. This is why calm people are often given leadership roles, even without asking for them. They don't escalate situations. They absorb tension without amplifying it. And that ability is invaluable. Pressure often tempts you to perform, to say something impressive, to react decisively, as to show that you're capable. But performance under pressure often backfires. It leads to rushed decisions, unnecessary words, and emotional signals you didn't intend to send. Calm, on the other hand, communicates confidence without effort. When you remain calm, you tell people something powerful without saying it. I can handle this. That message creates trust. I remember a situation where a problem emerged suddenly, and everyone around me reacted at once. Voices overlapped. Suggestions flew rapidly. Tension filled the space. In the past, I would have joined that energy, adding my voice to the noise. This time I didn't. I listened. I stayed quiet. I let the moment unfold without rushing to insert myself. After a short while, someone asked what I thought. That pause had changed everything. When I finally spoke, the room was ready to listen. Not because my idea was better, but because my calm had separated me from the chaos. Pressure amplifies behavior. Calm filters it. People under pressure look for anchors. They look for signs of certainty. They look for someone who isn't being pushed around by the moment. When you stay calm, you become that anchor. This doesn't mean ignoring urgency or delaying action unnecessarily. It means not letting urgency dictate your emotional state. It means responding deliberately, not reflexively. One of the most common mistakes people make under pressure is explaining too much, too fast. They rush to justify decisions. They flood the conversation with information, hoping clarity will stabilize the situation. But clarity doesn't come from volume. It comes from composure. A concise response under pressure carries far more authority than a long, emotional explanation. Calm also protects you from regret. Many words spoken under stress cannot be taken back. Many decisions made in emotional urgency create consequences that linger long after the moment has passed. When you stay calm, you give yourself the chance to choose wisely. You might still act quickly. You might still speak firmly. But you do so from clarity, not panic. Over time, this changes how people approach you. They bring you problems instead of drama. They trust your judgment in difficult situations. They stop testing your boundaries when things get tense. Not because you demand control, but because you demonstrate it. There is also an internal reward to calm under pressure. You begin to trust yourself more. Now, you no longer fear difficult conversations. You don't dread conflict as much because you know you can remain steady within it. That self-trust becomes a quiet confidence that follows you everywhere. Pressure loses its power to shake you. This doesn't mean you stop feeling stress. You still feel it. Your body still reacts. But you no longer obey every signal it sends. You recognize the difference between urgency and importance, between emotion and action. That distinction is maturity. Calm under pressure also shifts how you see others. When you're not reactive, you can observe more clearly. You see when others are acting from fear, when they're projecting, when they're trying to regain control through force or volume. That awareness keeps you from taking things personally. It prevents unnecessary conflict. It allows you to respond with intention rather than offense. People respect those who don't personalize pressure. They sense that you're not fragile. that you don't collapse when things become difficult, that you don't need to dominate the moment to survive it. Calm presence becomes your signature. It's not dramatic, it's not loud, but it's unmistakable. With enough repetition, this way of being becomes automatic. You stop thinking about staying calm. You simply are. Pressure no longer triggers panic. It triggers focus, and focus changes everything. The world is full of reactive people, full of noise, full of emotional urgency. When you learn to remain calm in the middle of that, you stand apart without trying. People don't just notice, they adjust. But in the next chapter, we'll look at how respect is not built in public moments, but in private ones, through discipline, restraint, and the choices you make when no one is watching. Chapter 7. Respect is built in private moments. Most people think respect is earned in the public. They imagine it's built during big conversations, visible wins, or moments when others are watching. They believe respect comes from how you perform under the spotlight, how you speak in meetings, or how you handle confrontation in front of an audience. But that's only where respect becomes visible. Respect is built somewhere else. It's built in private moments. Moments no one applauds. Moments no one notices. Moments where there is no immediate reward. The way you handle yourself when no one is watching determines how you show up when everyone is. For a long time, I underestimated this. I focused on how I appeared in important situations. I paid attention to my words, my tone, my posture. I wanted to seem calm, confident, and controlled. And sometimes, I succeeded. But it never lasted. Under pressure, old habits returned. Emotional reactions slipped out. Impatience showed. The calm I displayed publicly wasn't stable because it wasn't rooted in who I was privately. That's when I realized something critical. You can't perform calmly consistently. You have to practice it. Private moments are where emotional discipline is trained. It's how you respond to frustration when you're alone, how you speak to yourself after a mistake, how you handle irritation when there's no consequence for losing control. These moments shape your nervous system. They teach your body what is normal, and whatever becomes normal internally will surface externally, especially under stress. If you allow yourself to react freely in private, you will react publicly when it matters. If you practice restraint in private, calm becomes your default. This is why self-respect precedes external respect. When you keep promises to yourself, even small ones, something shifts internally. You begin to trust yourself. That trust creates stability. Stability creates confidence, and confidence creates presence. People feel their presence instantly. They may not know why you seem grounded, but they sense that you're not scattered, that you're not trying to manage impressions, that you're not performing, you're simply consistent. One of the most powerful private practices is learning to sit with discomfort without distraction. Most people escape discomfort immediately. They scroll, they talk, they distract themselves, they avoid the feeling until it fades or transforms into something else. But avoidance trains weakness. And when you stay with discomfort, without reacting, without numbing, without acting, you strengthen emotional endurance. You teach yourself that feelings pass without needing action. That skill is invisible, but it changes everything. Another private moment that builds respect is how you handle temptation to react when no one would blame you. When you're tired, when you're stressed, when you feel justified in snapping back. Each time you choose restraint instead of release, you reinforce control. Not repression, control. Repression hides emotion, control leads it. Private discipline also includes how you speak about others when they're not present. It's easy to complain, easy to criticize, easy to justify frustration by venting. But every time you do, you reinforce a reactive mindset. As you train yourself to externalize responsibility instead of stabilizing internally. Calm people don't rehearse resentment. They don't feed emotional loops. They process internally and move forward quietly. This doesn't make them passive. It makes them clean. Clean emotionally, clean mentally, clean in presence. That cleanliness shows up in conversation. Their words aren't heavy with unresolved tension. Their tone isn't sharp with stored frustration. Their silence isn't loaded. They are clear, and clarity is respected. Private moments also reveal whether your calm is conditional or real. Anyone can stay calm when things go their way. But how do you act when plans change unexpectedly? When someone disappoints you quietly? When things don't match your expectations and no one is around to witness your reaction? Those moments decide who you are becoming. If you allow yourself to lose control privately, you are rehearsing for public collapse. If you practice steadiness privately, you are preparing for public composure. Respect follows that preparation naturally. Another overlooked private practice is restraint in speech. Not every thought needs expression. Not every emotion needs narration. Learning to let thoughts pass without voicing them builds internal leadership. You stop being ruled by impulse. You stop identifying with every emotion. You stop mistaking feeling for truth. That separation is maturity. Over time, these private choices compound. They shape your posture, your pacing, your tone. You begin to move through the world with less friction. People sense that you are not easily pulled, that you don't chase reactions, that you don't need to assert yourself constantly to feel secure. That security is earned in silence. It's built early in the morning when you choose discipline over comfort, late at night when you reflect instead of escaping. In small moments where you choose control without applause. The world never sees those choices, but the world responds to their result. When pressure comes, you don't scramble. When conflict arises, you don't inflate. When challenged, you don't rush, because you've already trained yourself to lead internally. This is why respect often seems effortless in some people. It's not because they're lucky. It's because their inner life is ordered. They are not managing chaos inside, so they don't project it outside. Private discipline creates public authority. You don't need to announce it. You don't need to display it. You don't need to demand anything. It shows in how you pause, in how you listen, in how you choose not to react. Respect doesn't arrive all at once. It accumulates, quietly, gradually, built on hundreds of small decisions no one else notices. But when the moment comes that everyone is watching, it's already there. In the next chapter, we'll explore what happens when you no longer need approval at all, and how becoming internally independent changes the way people relate to you permanently. Chapter 8. Becoming the person who doesn't need approval. There is a quiet shift that changes everything. It's not loud, it's not dramatic, and most people never notice the exact moment it happens. It's the moment you stop needing approval, not because you've become cold, not because you've stopped caring, but because your sense of self is no longer negotiated in real time. For most of their lives, people outsource their stability. They look to reactions, feedback, tone, and validation to decide how they feel about themselves. A compliment lifts them, a criticism shakes them, silence unsettles them. Their inner state is constantly being adjusted by external signals. I lived this way longer than I realized. If a conversation went well, I felt confident. If someone seemed distant, I replayed every word. If I sensed disapproval, I felt compelled to fix it. My calm was conditional. My confidence is fragile. My sense of worth depended on how others responded to me. That dependence was exhausting. Approval seeking doesn't always look obvious. It often hides behind politeness, responsiveness, and being easy to work with. It shows up as overthinking messages, explaining intentions, and adjusting yourself to avoid friction. But underneath it all is the same pattern: giving other people authority over your inner state. The turning point came when I realized how much energy this cost. Every interaction became a performance. Every silence felt loaded. Every reaction from others felt like a verdict. I wasn't living from a centered place. I was managing impressions, and no amount of calm techniques can stabilize you if your identity is still tied to approval. True calm arrives when your self-respect is internal. This doesn't mean you stop listening to feedback or ignore others. It means feedback becomes information, not instruction. It informs you, but it doesn't define you. When you no longer need approval, something fundamental changes in how you move through the world. You speak more simply. You pause without anxiety. You let people misunderstand you without rushing to correct it. Not out of arrogance, but out of trust. Trust in your own judgment. Trust in your values. Trust that you don't need to be constantly validated to be okay. This trust is built gradually. It grows every time you choose honesty over likability. Every time you hold a boundary without explanation. Every time you stay calm while someone else reacts. And each of those moments tells your nervous system, I can handle this. And when you know you can handle discomfort, approval loses its grip. One of the clearest signs you no longer need approval is how you handle disagreement. You don't rush to persuade. You don't feel personally attacked. You don't need the other person to agree in order to remain steady. You listen, you respond if needed, or you let it go. That detachment is not indifference, it's autonomy. Another sign is how you handle silence. Silence stops feeling like rejection. It stops feeling like tension. It becomes neutral. You don't read into it. You don't fill it. You don't panic. You're comfortable not being constantly affirmed. This comfort makes you rare. Most people are unconsciously asking, am I okay, in every interaction. When you stop asking that question, your presence changes. You're no longer seeking something from the moment. You're contributing to it. People sense that shift immediately. They stop testing you. They stop pushing as hard. They stop feeling like they can pull you off center. Not because you've become rigid, but because you've become rooted. Approval seeking keeps you reactive. Approval independence makes you responsive. You choose when to engage. You choose when to speak. You choose when silence is enough. And that choice restores power. There is also a deep peace that comes with this shift. You stop replaying conversations. You stop worrying about how you came across. You stop carrying the emotional weight of every interaction. Your energy turns inward, not in isolation, but in stability. You know who you are when the room is quiet. You know where you stand when opinions clash. You know what matters, even when no one agrees. That knowing is unshakable. It doesn't require constant reinforcement. It doesn't need to be defended. It doesn't depend on mood or circumstance. This is what makes people feel safe around you. They know you won't collapse under pressure. They know you won't overreact to disagreement. They know your behavior isn't contingent on praise. Safety creates respect. Ironically, the less you seek approval, the more naturally it comes. Not in the form of compliments, but in the form of trust. People trust your judgment. They trust your calm. They trust your presence. You don't have to ask for respect when you no longer need permission to be yourself. This chapter is not about withdrawing from connection. It's about reconnecting with yourself so fully that you no longer disappear in other people's expectations. When you stop needing approval, you stop negotiating your worth. When you stop negotiating your worth, your behavior stabilizes. And when your behavior stabilizes, your presence carries weight. That is the final shift. Not louder, not tougher, not more impressive. Just centered, and from that center, calm is no longer something you practice. It's simply who you are. If there is one truth to carry with you after this audiobook, it is this. Power does not come from controlling others. It comes from controlling yourself. Throughout this journey, you've seen how easily respect is lost, not through failure, but through reaction, through urgency, through the quiet habit of giving your emotional authority away in moments that don't deserve it. You've also seen something else. That calm is not passive, silence is not weakness, and restraint is not fear. They are signs of someone who knows where their center is. When you stop reacting immediately, you reclaim space. When you stop explaining yourself, you reclaim authority. When you stop seeking approval, you reclaim your identity. These shifts don't announce themselves. They don't come with applause. Yeah, but they change how people experience you, and more importantly, how you experience yourself. You begin to notice that situations which once rattled you now pass without leaving a mark. Conversations that used to drain you no longer feel heavy. You don't replay moments in your head as often. You don't feel the same urgency to correct, defend, or prove. That's not indifference. That's freedom. You are no longer negotiating your worth in real time. This kind of power is quiet because it doesn't need to be seen. It works internally first, and from that internal order, external respect follows naturally. Not because you demand it, but because you no longer leak it. There will still be difficult moments. People will still challenge you. Pressure will still show up unannounced. But now, you know where your leverage is. It's in the pause. Now it's in the breath you take before responding. It's in the silence you allow instead of rushing to fill it. That pause is where choice lives. And choice is power. As you move forward, don't aim to be perfect. Aim to be consistent. Calm control isn't built in one dramatic moment. It's built in hundreds of small, ordinary decisions. Choosing not to react when you're tired, choosing not to explain when it's unnecessary, choosing to sit with discomfort instead of escaping it. Those choices add up. Quietly, invisibly. And one day, you'll realize something has changed. People listen when you speak. They treat you with more care. They don't push as hard. They don't test as often. Not because you became intimidating, but because you became grounded. Remember this, you don't need to win every interaction. You don't need to correct every misunderstanding. You don't need to be loud to be strong. You need clarity. You need restraint. You need self-command. If you commit to that path, the world will respond differently. Not because you forced it to, but because calm authority is impossible to ignore. And if this audiobook helped you see yourself more clearly, consider sharing it with someone who might need it right now. A friend who feels overwhelmed, someone who reacts faster than they want to, someone who is strong but tired of losing control in moments that matter. Sometimes, the most powerful thing you can give someone is not advice, but perspective. You don't need a louder voice. You don't need sharper words. You need a steadier center, and from that center, respect follows, quietly, consistently, and without force.